Hey guys, Figment here. So today we're talking about the iridescent add-ons, particularly the ones I feel are just not good, and maybe some ways I would change them around to make them a little better. There are quite a few iridescent add-ons in this game that just outright, objectively, they're just bad. There are a few in here, particularly the one for Hag I'll be going over that I think gets way more hate than it deserves and can be useful in niche situations. At the same time, I feel like that's not how a iridescent add-on should work. Iridescent add-ons should be OP, personally. I think with the changes they made to the Blood Web, there's been much discussion over whether iridescents should be as strong as they are. But I think in general, with the way the game is balanced, I'm going to put air quotes around that the iridescent add-on problem isn't as big of a deal as people think. People have been saying recently, because of the decreased price of add-ons, that you can stockpile iridescents way quicker, which is true. However, you could have done that in the past if you were smart with how you spent your things and if you made one killer in particular. So personally, I don't think it changed anything. That being said, we're going to get to the first ones, and they're both for the best killer in the game. That is Nurse. Nurse has a lot of great add-ons, particularly the Omega Blink Nurse, which are the add-ons that increase your range and your recharge time at the same time, which makes her able to blink way farther and way more often, which is nuts. The first Eerie add-on she has is the Torn Bookmark, which increases her available blinks by 1, but it also has a downside of increasing the power recharge by 50%. Now you can counterbalance this with a couple of other add-ons that will decrease the recharge time to kind of compensate for it, so that way you have 3 blinks. That being said, most times you don't even need the third blink. If you were a decent to good nurse, 2 blinks is all you need, 1 to get where you're going and 1 to correct if need be. On top of that, the 50% increased recharge time just isn't worth it. You want to blink more often as much as you can to get those quick downs. As for changing this add-on, I really don't think this one needs to be changed. I do think it is a bad add-on as far as power goes, but as far as keeping into the spirit of what an iridescent add-on should be, I think this accomplishes that goal. It adds an extra token with one downside that could be mitigated with other add-ons. So I actually think the Torn Bookmark is just fine. The Matchbook, on the other hand, which is her other iridescent, it basically increases her movement speed to 4.2 meters, which is closer to the base movement speed of all the other killers, but it reduces your blinks by 1. So if you have 2 at base, this decreases it to 1. If you're using the bookmark with this, you'll still have 2, but you'll be moving slightly faster. This is just bad. It's a cool idea. I think what they could do for this is honestly make it a purple and swap it with the Omega Blink or something similar to that. The concept of this add-on isn't bad. It's basically being like, okay, how do we change Nurse's playstyle? Well, we get rid of one of her blinks and we make her a normal M1 killer. So the blinks are more for the movement rather than actually getting the downs and the chases, right? Cool idea, just terrible execution. Next we have Oni, who arguably has the worst add-ons of the bunch that I'm about to list out. Overall, Oni's add-ons are actually pretty okay. I think the next killer, Pyramid Head, who I'm going to go over, actually has the worst add-ons in the game as far as usability. I should say general usability, not necessarily complete usability. There's some in there that are useful, but not nearly as much. On Pyramid Head, you just kind of want to run the range ones, not because they're good necessarily, but because everything else isn't that great, which is not a good way to design something. It should be a choice, right? You should think about what you're picking for a particular playstyle, and Pyramid Head really doesn't have that with his add-ons. We'll get to him in a minute. So Oni's first Eerie add-on is the Bloody Glove. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce the first word of that. Regiros? I probably butchered that to hell. This makes it so the blood orbs are visible to survivors. Survivors that come in contact with the blood orb absorb it, but their aura is shown to you for 2 seconds, and it stacks for each blood orb they get. This is an okay tracking perk. The problem is most survivors aren't sitting in their blood orbs, and because the blood orbs are visible to them, they know you have this add-on, so they know you can see their auras. On indoor maps, this actually isn't that bad. Oni's power isn't that great on indoor maps because there's a lot of quick turns you have to make, especially on something like Larry's. So this can be great for maps like that, and that's the biggest issue with this add-on. It's too situational. On big open maps, I don't care if I can see the aura of someone all the way on the other side of the map, most of the time. But it also means survivors can pick up your blood orbs, which means you won't get your power as often, which can also be very, very debilitating. How many times have you played Oni, and you're like, I just need like 2 more blood orbs, and you can't find any? Well, this is going to make that situation happen way more often. Honestly, the only thing I would change about this is just make it so the blood orbs are not visible to survivors, and that's it. I think it would be perfectly fine. It would still keep its exact strength. It would just mean the survivors would have to be paying attention to realize they're picking up the blood orbs for this add-on to be used. Or keep the visible to survivors thing, but just make it so the blood orbs don't get absorbed. One of the two. I think one of those two things will make this add-on perfectly okay. I think it's still in a decent spot. It's different enough from all his other add-ons that just basically make his power better. That's almost what every single one of his add-ons do. I think this one actually changes how he plays the game, and I think that's fine. It's a great information add-on, and if you combine this with a full information build or something like Lethal Pursuer, you'll basically have eyes on any survivor of the game, and that can be really convenient, especially when you're in your Demon Dash. You could just go all the way across the map super fast. His next Eerie add-on, the Iridescent Family Crest, I have a strange relationship with this add-on. I love the concept of this add-on. So if you miss the Demon Strike, it will cause all survivors within 24 meters of your location to scream and reveal their location. So once again, it's another tracking add-on, which is fine. The problem is you're expected to basically go to an area and then just keep slamming your mallet until you find a survivor screaming. Or you miss the one you're chasing and they scream, which is cool, I guess. Like, once again, this is an add-on I don't know how they would change, except there is something insane they could do this add-on that I actually wouldn't mind, and I'm not sure what the policy on this would be. If they made it so any survivor within 24 meters of your location screams, reveals their location, and is hindered for, let's say, 2 seconds. Just 2 seconds. Because they're scared. Like, I feel like it fits thematically with it, too. It's like they're terrified of the Oni when he slams the hammer. He's looking for them. They scream, you see where they are, and they're hindered for 2 seconds. Which is basically how much a Freddy snare does. But Oni can't capitalize it necessarily as well as them. It would also make it so it has some utility outside of when you're looking for survivors. If you already found someone in chase, you could miss a hammer swing on purpose, so they're hindered for a couple seconds and maybe don't make a window or something. You could easily do that, and I think that would be a decent way to change this add-on around to make it more useful than it is now, which is almost non-existent unless specific niche cases. The most use this add-on typically gets is in-game once the hatch is closed, because you can run to door, slamming your mallet and then seeing where the survivor is, but no way out exists. So it's an interesting idea at the very least, I will say that. Next is Pyramid Head. So Pyramid Head in general has some really, really, really bad add-ons. Add-ons that really don't do much. I mean, he has a purple add-on that inflicts Oblivious for 15 seconds. What? 15 seconds of Obliviousness if they go over your trail. That's it. That's all they get. 15 seconds. If you're nowhere near it, doesn't do anything. If you are near it, who cares that you're right there, right? Pretty much the only add-ons that anyone runs on Pyramid Head is his range add-ons, for the most part. There are a couple exceptions. Personally, I like the Ceremony Book. It causes hemorrhage if they go through your thing until they're healed, which is actually not a bad thing for Pyramid Head because he can hit through walls, and if they're trying to dodge it, then the hemorrhage effect goes through, blah blah blah. I think there's a lot of other add-ons that people mislook with him, but most of his add-ons, I will agree, are really pretty bad. On to his Iridescence though. His first one is the Goblet, which makes it so you get undetectable if you stand in your trails, which is not good. So you basically have to plan out your trails, use those trails behind you in the direction you know you're gonna go, and then get undetectable for what reason exactly? Like, you can't put them near generators, so you can't just use it to patrol gens undetectable. And your trails don't last that long, so it's, I don't know. I think an easy fix for this add-on, because once again, it's a concept that's fine, and it could make Pyramid Head a stealth killer. I think what they need to change for this is just give it a time limit. Make it so when you step on your trail, you gain undetectable for, let's say, 5 seconds. That way, when you hop off, you're still undetectable for 5 more seconds, right? And then you can get back on the trail and reactivate it. That way you can like leave little patches that you can go through while you're patrolling gens or something. That's honestly all I can think of to keep the base idea of this add-on going. His next one isn't completely terrible. That's why I wasn't going to mention it, but I've done both Eries for the other killers, so I figure I'd mention this one. The Seal of Metatron. When you cage a survivor, the auras of all of the survivors that are tormented are revealed for 6 seconds. So this add-on has 2 main purposes. Now, before I go over those purposes, I would like to mention the issues. So most of the time, you're not tormenting everyone on the team. You're trying not to do that because the way to get rid of torment is if you cage somebody. So yeah, you don't want to torment everyone. If you do, it's not bad necessarily, and you can play around it and whatnot, but but for the most part, you don't want to do that. Now, the aura reading. So we're still not sure if this is a bug or if it's intentional. But when you do this, the person you send to the cage, who should be untormented when you send them, you see their auras as well. So you actually get to know the exact position of the cage, which can be a godsend sometimes. You'll know which side of the map that person is and if you need to bother going over there. That being said, if you play Pyramid Head long enough, you'll learn the general positions of the cages. You won't always get it right 100% of the time, but even playing a few games, you'll start to understand understand, it tries to spawn the cage as far away from Pyramid Head as possible, in whichever corner of the map it can get to. Sometimes in the middle, depends on the map. I think mid-witch it can actually spawn you in the middle. I could be wrong on that, but for the most part, it'll try to get them into a corner. But if you do have all the other survivors tormented, you can also see what they're doing, and it's just free information for 6 seconds. You can see who's going for the save, if anyone is, which generators are on, etc., etc. And it's like, if you bring barbecue and chili with this, it means you'll always get aura reading if they're tormented. And I think that is the key to making this add-on good. Just make it so you get all the auras if you cage somebody. I can't see that being that broken or OP, and I think it would just make Pyramid Head better. It would give the Seal of Metatron actual more utility, and I mean, if you combine it with the Goblet, then you could get undetectable on your way to those auras you just saw. You can combine this with Lethal Pursuer to constantly get aura reading throughout the match. Aura reading is something Pyramid Head uses a lot to get a lot of hits through walls and whatnot. So I don't think it would be a terrible change at all, personally. I mean, someone could correct me. There might be some ridiculous thing that he could do with it. Maybe if you make it so they're not tormented, maybe make it 4 seconds instead of 6, and then Lethal Pursuer could bump that up to 6. But yeah, for the most part, this add-on is just not great. Neither of his areas are. Most of his add-ons aren't. Last up, we have Hag. So Hag is in an interesting case because she has 2 iridescent add-ons, one of which is probably one of the best add-ons in the game, and the other is probably the worst add-on in the game, depending on who you ask. If you ask me, I disagree. But for the most part, from people's consensus, Waterlogged Shoe is considered the worst iridescent add-on in the game. At least it's one of Hag's worst add-ons. So this increases the movement speed of Hag to 4.6. Puts her on standard with every other killer. Now, when the survivors trigger a trap, they're hindered while they're in the range of the trap, but it disables your ability to teleport. So it basically makes you a basic M1 killer with Freddy traps you can put anywhere, but you have to preset them. Now, I will agree on its own, this add-on is pretty trash. It just makes you a basic M1 killer that really can't do much other than hinder survivors at specific locations, and just you have to preset them and all this stuff. That being said, there is one add-on combination with this that I really, really like doing, and that's the Scarred Hand. The Scarred Hand actually gives the Phantasms collision, which means the survivors can't just run through them. And combined with the hindered status effect, this can really throw people off, especially if you're right on them, and it can get you some pretty easy hits a lot of the times, especially if it's at a loop. That's the other thing. If you put this around a loop, if they're in the trap range around the loop, then you can easily get that hit because they're so slow. You could also combine it with the ones that increase the range of the traps, which are typically bad for Hag. But once again, if you put this at a loop and make the range longer, then the hindered effect is still hitting them, and you're still faster than you usually are. That's another side effect of this add-on that a lot of people don't talk about. It makes Hag an actual basic M1 killer and gives her the movement speed of most standardized killers, which can throw survivors off because no one's expecting it. Now, I will agree, in 99% of situations, this add-on isn't good. I'm just here to say it's not nearly as bad or useless as some people claim. You can make it work for sure, but why would you force yourself to make it work when you could just play base Hag? And it's, yeah, that I understand. Her other add-on is the Mint Rag, which is actually a really, really strong add-on and one that needs no introduction. You can teleport to any trap at any time. It does have a cooldown of 15 seconds, but that's really it. The Mint Rag is really, really strong. It literally lets you teleport anywhere you want it, anytime you want, as long as you have trap preset. They don't have to trip it, they don't have to do anything. You just gotta look in the general direction and hit the button. If they do trip a trap, that 15-second cooldown doesn't do anything. You can go to those at any time you want, as long as you're in range. So that's really just my thoughts on the quote-unquote worst iridescent add-ons, as I've seen most people discuss. There's a few other ones I could have thrown in here. I know Pinhead's box one, where like he sees the location of the box, and gets undetectable. Or Huntress's, when she runs out of hatchet, she moves at basic M1 speed. But I think these in particular are the worst, with like no contention other than maybe the Waterlogged Shoe. I think the Waterlogged Shoe is just one you have to make work, and I think that's the problem with a lot of these add-ons. I would argue Pyramid Head had the worst of the bunch. Pyramid Head's add-ons just don't really help him, and you can't really play around them too much. They're just kind of nice, and even then they don't really give you much, and you can't really feel the impact. But those are just this Puppet's dumb thoughts on this situation. If you have any thoughts about which Eerie add-ons you think are worse, if you hate my ideas on how to change the couple I decided to change, just let me know down below and all that stuff. Share the video, like, sub, all that stupid stuff. I'm just some guy with a microphone who's just saying his thoughts. But with that being said, have a good one, everybody. Bye.